Hello and welcome to Potternyms, a Harry Potter podcast about Wizarding World words. My name is Al, and I'm a giant nerd. With me is my co-host and brother.
Hi, I'm Erik, and I am not quite the Harry Potter geek or word nerd that Al is, so most of this info will be brand new to me. Obviously, there will be spoilers.
Each week, I'll choose a Wizarding World word and tell you about why it's so awesome and clever. So, whether you're like me and know most of these already,
or you're like me and most of this is a surprise,
I hope you learn something that will add to your enjoyment of this phenomenal fantasy world. This week, let's get serious. Sirius Black. Oh!
Bum bum bum!
So, I wanted to start with Sirius because he's my favorite character. Or at least he was when I first read this series. So, looking back now, he's a little bit of a jerk and a bully, and a little bit reckless and immature, but he still has a soft spot in my heart. So I wanted to start with him. Plus, his name is really fun.
It is really fun. And this actually is a character that I do know the basics about, I think.
Oh, good. You have an idea of who it is.
I have a very vague idea of who this is.
What is your vague idea of who this is?
Yeah, all I really think I know is that he has some relation to Harry and comes to Harry's support at some point in the series. That's all I really think I know.
Okay, yes. Well, that is pretty much correct, yes. He's not biologically related to Harry, but he is Harry's godfather. He and Harry's father, James, were best friends. So,
okay.
And they all went to Hogwarts together. Mm-hmm. Yes. And of course, he does come to Harry's aid in various ways throughout the series. At first, we think he's a bad character, an evil escaped prisoner, but turns out he's not as bad as we think. He's actually a good guy.
Oh, okay. So with a name like that, there's got to be some interesting meaning behind it.
There is. Imagine that. Sirius, the name Sirius, is the name of the dog star, which is the brightest star in the constellation Canis Major, which means the great dog. This is interesting, particular to Sirius, because do you know why it might be particularly interesting to Sirius?
Yes, that reminded me that he's like a shapeshifter of sorts.
It's called an Animagus.
An Animagus. We'll have to talk about that word in another episode.
Yes, probably will.
And he turns into a dog or werewolf type creature, right?
He turns into a dog. There's also a werewolf. That's a different character.
Oh, I'm combining two people.
You are. But they're two people that were best friends and also in that group of friends with James, with Harry's father.
So they rolled in a pack together.
They did. Imagine that. So it's a skill that is hard to do. So not very many people can transform themselves into an animal. And you're supposed to, if you learn how to do it, you can only transform into one particular animal usually, not any animal you want. And once you learn how to do that, you're supposed to register with the government so they know who can transform into an animal. But Sirius and his friends do not do that. So he's an unregistered Animagus. He's under the radar. He's illegal that way.
A rebel.
But anyway, so Sirius is the dog star, so it's very appropriate for him. And Sirius Black, he turns into a black dog. So it's literally, his name is Black Dog Star, basically.
It literally is.
It literally is. But Sirius, the star, has cool connotations with a dog in cultures all around the world. Most common, it's thought of the ancient Greeks. That's where the word Sirius comes from. But it's a star that becomes visible just above the horizon at certain times of the year. And to the ancient Greeks, it usually became visible at that time just before the hottest days of summer were coming. So that's where the term the dog days of summer comes from.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of cool. And they actually almost thought that the dogs panting so much with the hot weather was a sign that the dog star was affecting them negatively, that it was influencing the dogs and making them go crazy.
So does this have any relation back to the series? Does Sirius, come and go like the star does across the horizon? Does he appear during summer or anything like that?
That's interesting. He doesn't appear during specific times of the year, but he does kind of come and go. He spends a long period of time in prison, not of his own volition, obviously. But then he isn't released from prison, he escapes. So then he's on the run. So he's always, popping in and out of places, and he can't stay very long because he might get caught, and he's got to keep a low profile. So in that way, it could be related. That's cool. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, hey.
That's what you're here for, right?
That's why I'm here, guys. Yeah.
So that's the most common dog relation to the word Sirius. But it's also in Chinese astronomy, the star Sirius was known as the celestial wolf, which a wolf is not exactly the same as a dog, but it's in that family. And also many North American indigenous tribes called that star some form of dog or wolf or coyote or something. So it's across many cultures that it's got this relationship with a dog.
Interesting.
And Sirius does display some defining characteristics of dogs. He's very loyal and he's very protective. And he is very exuberant and enthusiastic, almost detrimentally sometimes. He's got that useful appeal, but he's also almost in this arrested development, partially because he's been in prison for half his life. Actually, I forgot to mention earlier that the Animagus, his ability to turn into this dog, is part of how he survived in the prison. Because do you remember who guards the prison, Azkaban?
Yes, the Death Eaters.
No.
This is why you are here. No, I can't remember.
They're called Dementors.
Dementors, right.
Yes. They're like, I'm sure you remember them from the films. They're like those black robes.
Yes, and they would take the soul from you, yeah.
So they feed on people's happiness. So this prison is like a terrible place. And one of the ways that he survives without going mad, like most people do, well, not entirely mad, let's say, is that he can turn into this dog, and it doesn't affect him as much as a dog.
So he's just hanging out in his jail cell as a dog curled up in the corner taking a nap.
Yep, basically. Yep. Shutting out the Dementors.
That's right.
Shutting out the cruel world around him.
Don't we all wish we could do that sometimes?
Yes, I think we do. So, anyway, that's the dog connection. There's a little more to that, though. Sirius, in ancient Greek, actually, the term means bright or glowing or scorcher, which is appropriate in a couple of ways. It's appropriate because Sirius is the one kind of bright or good wizard in his family of dark, evil wizards. He's the one that turns to the light, to the good side, and that makes him an outcast in his family. But he's the bright spot. And also, Sirius, the name, is the name of Orion's dog. Do you know who Orion is in mythology?
Yeah, well...
Or you've heard the name?
I have certainly heard the name, and I know where his belt is in the sky.
Yes, you can see his belt in the sky, exactly. So Orion is a hunter in Greek mythology, basically. So, but it's cool because his belt is one of the stars that most people can identify.
Yeah.
Constellations, not stars.
Yes.
But if you follow the line of Orion's belt, kind of in a straight line, you'll come to Sirius, the dog star. Okay. So it's kind of like Orion's dog is right there by his side. So it has that mythological significance. And it also has a significance in the wizarding world because Sirius's dad is named Orion.
Really? Interesting.
Yes, which I didn't know until I started researching this, but it makes a lot of sense.
So that's a character that doesn't actually show up in the series, but has a
it's kind of... they allude to his family, but he's already dead by the time the series starts, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he doesn't appear in the series. But many of the Black family, which is another old wizarding family, most of them are named for a star or a constellation or a galaxy or something celestial.
Yeah.
So
Very interesting. That's a really cool way to name a family all using the same kind of source of the family.
Exactly. So they're not all like super obviously related. But if you know a little something about the context, then you can find the pattern.
Pretty incredible.
It's pretty incredible. It's just goes to show you how well thought out this series is, that you don't always realize in a superficial reading of it. You know, when you're reading it to enjoy the story and the plot, but you don't think about how much thought went into just even the name of this one character.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. When an author can create not just a character, but the history and the heritage of that character, and have it kind of all be inspired by, you know, celestial bodies in this case. That takes way more planning, and you would never figure that out just by reading the books or watching the movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those are the cool little Easter eggs that hopefully we'll continue to reveal here.
Exactly. This is the point of this podcast, Potternyms. The truth behind the words in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I do have one more little tidbit here about, not about the name Sirius Black, but about Sirius's nickname. Do you know what his nickname was? Specifically in dog form.
I do not.
He was called Padfoot.
Padfoot. I was going to guess Spot.
So close. So close. He was part of the group of 4 friends that was James Potter, Harry's dad, and Remus Lupin, who ends up being a teacher later. I'm sure we'll talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Pettigrew, and Sirius Black. These were this 4 group of friends, and they all could change into an animal of some kind. And they all had little nicknames for themselves as part of this group, who they call themselves the Marauders as a group. And they each had little nicknames for them in their Animagus form. And Sirius's was Padfoot, which, you know, makes sense for like a dog's paw is called as the pads of the foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Padfoot also has a bit of a legend in England. There's a story of myths about a black dog in mostly northern England, sometimes central England, that's supposedly like a spectral hellhound with glowing eyes that sometimes haunts moors, or more often like a churchyard or a graveyard. It's said to be able to vanish instantly, or in other cases to fade slowly into the dark. It's kind of ominous and often associated with death.
Ooh.
An omen of death almost.
Mm-hmm.
Which Sirius also is in the book. I don't know if you remember, the Sirius is seen about town as a dog, and people take it to be a grim, which is an omen of death.
Yes.
Yes, and even in one divination class, the class on like predicting the future, they're predicting the future with tea leaves, and the teacher, Sybil Trelawney, the professor, she sees a grim in the cup and predicts Harry's death. Oh my God, the black dog! But it's really serious.
Well, this is very intriguing and interesting. I really had no idea. I mean, you hear the name Sirius Black, and I'm like, that's a cool name, and that fits the character, and like, yeah, he's a black dog, but it goes way deeper than that. Very cool.
It really does. So, did you learn anything interesting about Sirius?
I mean, not only did I learn some interesting things about this character, I also learned some things about astronomy.
Right?
And history. So, yeah, very cool, and makes me want to watch the movies again or read the books again. So that I can catch some of these kind of cues and, you know, lines and his personality.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's much more prominent in the books, obviously, because J.K. Rowling took the time to put that in there, I'm sure. And the people who did the movie may have been like, nobody will get that. I don't care. Or they just didn't know themselves. But I do think there's probably some of that in the movie. And obviously, Sirius turns into a dog in the movies. So there's that one.
You can at least get that one level.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. He has a black dog, literally the black dog star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about other characters, and
yes,
as you said, like we'll be talking about spells and creatures and places and things of that sort too. So
me too. I'm excited, and I actually learned a lot researching this. I knew beforehand that Sirius was a dog star, but I didn't know all the details behind it. And so I had a good, interesting time learning all these little details. It makes it even more appropriate, I feel like, that this is his name.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, why don't you play us out, Al?
All right. Well, if you'd like to support this podcast, please head over to patreon.com/Potternyms. And we'd love for you to donate what you can to help us continue to bring you more interesting Wizarding World words. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Potternyms and on Twitter at Potternyms. Till next time, I'm Al.
And I'm Erik.
And this has been Potternyms.